Well, good evening, Davis. This is Jim Morose, and this is A Republic Always, okay? And it's a Republic Always, and actually the Constitution was actually signed in 1787, not 1776. 1776 was when the Declaration of Independence was signed, and that's when we, start the birth of America. But the Constitution wasn't fully completed and ratified and signed until 1787. Or even though, this is December. Merry Christmas. This is our the end of season 1. This is season 1. We're on episode 8. I try to do one a month, and if you do the math, I miss 4 months. Okay, so just get that timer rolling there. But other than that, life is good. And the other thing is, the whole concept of this show was to just try to highlight the fact that on DCAT, I've noticed that there's not too many local access programming. It's all, coming from outside. I forget what they call corporate or syndicated shows coming from other cable companies and other networks and things. So. And a lot of them, like Democracy Now!, global freedom and all this stuff, which is kind of funny when you look at like the UN Global Bill of Rights. I think last time I looked, they had like 157, and if who could read them all? That's why the founding fathers were so unique and so intelligent in their thing. They said that we are endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights. You don't need to define them. It's just, it's self-evident. It's self-evident. These truths are self-evident. You don't need, and as Thomas Jefferson said, truth can stand by itself. Error alone needs the support of government, and that's what's happening here. The government is so big, and it's supporting all the lies and errors that have happened in the past. So that's why I started this show, to just get a little, the American foundation, truth, justice, and the American way, and the Constitution, and our Bill of Rights, and our Declaration of Independence. It's like a hat trick of moral documents that set the foundation for this country. And it's very difficult to see what's happening now in light of our current culture, in the whole educational system and everything. When I talk about the culture, I'm talking about the movies, the Hollywood, TV shows, institutions, these NGOs, which, well, we won't even get into that. NGOs, non-governmental organizations, which a lot of them kind of went defunct when DOGE got rid of all the U.S. aid money, because all those NGOs were actually just being funded by the government. And so it's really not an NGO if they're getting all their money from the government. But, I need a whole show to go over that. We're here to talk about, I want to recap. We've just done this whole series on the Constitution. And we've done 8 sections already. Number 1 was, why do we need a republic? Number 2 was, who wrote the Miracle Constitution in Philadelphia? And number 3 was the limited powers of Congress. Number 4 was the limited powers of the executive branch. And then number 5 was the Supreme Court's, the do's and don'ts. And number 6 was the real reason for the Bill of Rights. And number 7 was a nation of states, how we all got together. And number 8 was the Civil Rights Amendments. So that's what we've been doing. We've gone over those 8. And so today we're going to do the last 2, which are number 9 and 10. And number 9 is taxes, voting rights, and prohibition. And number 10 is the experiment is a moral challenge. So our government is based on all this and more. We really need to focus in on what's happening and why these things happen. So, again, 9 and 10 are going to talk about the whole concept of the amendments and how the Constitution and the first 10 amendments were the Bill of Rights. Again, like we learned, the first 10 amendments had to be put in place because the states would not give the government all that power. They wanted to clearly say, yeah, you guys are going to, keep you're full charge of keeping the states together and safe, the borders of America. But there are certain things you can't touch, and because of what was going on at the time, it was freedom of the speech and the press and guns, and those are the first two. Congress shall make no law, and then it was shall not abridge. So it's not rocket science. It's just, Congress can't make any laws about these things, and we could get into the whole concept of how do we end up with 97% of all the press and all the media is liberal socialist and pushing the liberal socialist agenda, and there's 3%, if you can find them, of conservative Republican trying to, hold the line like my pitiful show here. But again, it gets even worse than that. I mean, there was only a couple of networks, and there was One America News. There was a couple of stations that came up, in the government, and they just slammed it down and shut it down. They don't, because they even kicked Tucker Carlson off Fox News, which has gone down to the liberal swill bucket. And they're just, just towing the party line now. Except there's a few commentators on Fox that are, still trying to put out the truth, but the other ones are just playing ball. Yeah, that's right. So it's a very tough sell. It's a very tough sell. We got to look at the climate and see what's going on. Like I said, the culture has gone, into, in the educational system. They've all gone the same way of the political system. We used to have a lot of bias. Then we've got into polarization, and now it's just hostile. The climate, the political climate, everything is hostile. They're shooting people. They just shot Charlie Kirk. They tried to shoot President Trump twice. It's not a healthy environment. They shot Steve Scalise. And this school shooting, yes, it's not the gun's fault. It's the climate of hate and fear. And who's giving you that hate and fear? It's all brought to you by the media, the culture, and the democratic elites. Can't say it anymore. So there we go. So let's we're going to cue up the first video. We're going to talk about, this video will talk about the taxes, voting rights, and prohibition. We're going to really focus on this whole prohibition when we get there. But I do want to say that once we finish these 10 blocks, next year we're going to talk about how all these things relate to our current affairs and what the heck is going on in our culture, in our education, and in our political system. We have gone off the deep end, and let's fire the tape up.
The Constitution has been amended 27 times. That may sound like a lot, but that's over the course of almost 250 years. And consider this, almost 12,000 amendments have been proposed. That fewer than 30 have made it through the amendment process is a testament to the strength of the framers' original design. The most famous amendments are, of course, the first 10, the Bill of Rights. Most of the others fall into 3 broad categories. Those that expanded the franchise, voting rights. Those that expanded the federal government's power. And those that fixed issues relating to the office of the presidency. Let's look at each category. Category 1, those that expanded the franchise, voting rights. The 17th Amendment, ratified in 1913, took the selection of senators out of the hands of state legislatures and placed it into the hands of the voters. The framers had believed that state officials would collectively have a better grasp of the state's needs than would ordinary citizens. However, as political machines grew in influence during the 19th century, so did political corruption. A bribery scandal involving the selection of an Illinois senator in 1910 tipped the scales in favor of direct election. The 19th Amendment, ratified in 1920, guarantees that suffrage shall not be denied on account of sex. In other words, women were given the right to vote. There was nothing in the Constitution that prohibited women from voting. It was just thought to be unnecessary. This was a general belief held by men and women at the time of the Constitution's writing. The two sexes had their specific roles. Men worked, women raised the children. A man's vote represented the entire household. The Industrial Revolution of the 19th century changed this formula as more and more women joined the workforce. Women began to demand the right to express themselves as individual citizens. The 19th Amendment ensured that right at the ballot box. The 23rd Amendment, ratified in 1961, included the District of Columbia in presidential elections. Since Washington, D.C. isn't a state, it originally didn't have any electoral votes. When its population grew larger than some states, it seemed to make sense to give the district representation in the national election. The 24th Amendment, ratified in 1964, banned poll taxes, fees imposed by states on voters, specifically black voters. By 1964, 5 southern states still had poll taxes on their books, a remnant of Jim Crow laws. By banning the tax, the 24th Amendment ended a blatant form of discrimination. The 26th Amendment, ratified in 1971, lowered the minimum age of voting from 21 to 18. With soldiers as young as 18 fighting in World War II and then in Vietnam, many felt that if you were old enough to fight, you were old enough to vote for the leaders who could send you into war. Category 2, the amendments that expanded the government's power. The 16th Amendment, ratified in 1913, gave Congress the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes. As wealth disparity increased between farmers, workers, and a new class of fabulously wealthy industrialists like John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, and J.P. Morgan, so did the sentiment for an income tax. The promise was that only the rich would pay. History would quickly prove otherwise. The top tax rate shot up from 7% to 77% to finance World War I, and then 94% to finance World War II. But of course, the income tax didn't stay confined to the wealthy, as any young person getting his first paycheck can attest. The 18th Amendment, known as Prohibition, was ratified in 1919. It banned the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors. The motive behind the amendment was a good one: to reduce alcoholism, a destroyer of countless lives and a primary source of violent crime, domestic abuse, and sexual assault. But the amendment was ultimately a failure, leading to the unintended consequence of a massive black market and the emergence of organized crime. The 21st Amendment in 1933 repealed Prohibition, making the 18th Amendment the only one to ever be repealed. Category 3, the amendments that fixed issues related to the office of the presidency. The 20th Amendment, ratified in 1933, moved Inauguration Day from March to January. The modern world was moving much too fast to wait 5 months to transfer power from one president to the next. The 22nd, ratified in 1951, limited the president to 2 terms in office as a reaction to Franklin Roosevelt's 4 terms. And the 25th, ratified in 1967, allows the vice president to become acting president in the event the commander-in-chief is physically or mentally incapacitated. The Constitution has proven to be remarkably durable, just as the framers envisioned. They wanted a document that could be amended and adjusted as times changed, but not so easily that its core principles would be compromised. You'd have to say they succeeded. I'm John Yoo, Professor of Law at the University of California, Berkeley, for Prager University.
Hi. Welcome back. Again, this is just the foundation. This is just trying to understand what's actually happening with, as the Constitution was originally designed and how it's working through the years and through the systems. Can we just kind of throw up the picture number 2? And just to reiterate what he said, there were 12,000 amendments proposed. Only 27 went through. And one of them, or 2 of them, one of them was the prohibition, and then another one was the repealing the prohibition, okay? And so it's trying to keep everything intact. And that's the beauty of the Constitution, is that it can be changed, but it's hard to change. And we really shouldn't do it willy-nilly. And prohibition was a prime example. We have a lot of prohibitions happening now. I call it the law of unintended consequences, okay? So even though Prohibition sounded like a great thing and all this other stuff that when if you go back and study the history of all this stuff, so they did it in 1918. And then the unintended consequences would have created all sorts of, people wanted their booze and they created all sorts of underground, it was the black market, then it turned into organized crime and it was just a violent mess. So they repealed it and made everything legal again so that we could keep track of what's going on. And, it's a vice. All these things are vices, but, that's the beauty of America. We're free to do what we want, and if you want to, drink to excess and everything else, we can't stop you. But if you drink to excess and then start breaking the laws, then we got a problem. So that's where you would draw the line in freedom. Okay, you can do what you want. God gave us free will, and so that's what we need to do. Unfortunately, today, laws typically are supposed to be. This is why the laws of unintended consequences are really happening today. It just happened here in Danvers with the whole Ducky situation, right? We had to have the district attorney of Essex County come to the selectmen's meeting and explain how this new juvenile reform act of 2017 or 18 or whatever it was in reaction to the George Floyd and how mean and awful the police are. So now they tied the police's hands and got all these restrictions, and so now the cops are afraid to do their job because they can get sued, and you can't touch kids under 18. They're treated as kids. I mean, there was one case recently in Washington State where they said there was a 23-year-old kid who was carjacked and beat some person up. I don't know if he killed him or seriously injured. I forget the whole details, but his lawyer, his argument was, well, he's still a child. The frontal cortex lobe isn't fully developed until the child is 25. And so, of course, you can have a field day with this stuff. Oh, they can't make a decision because their brain hasn't developed fully until they're 25, but yet we're going to let them make sex change decisions? You got to be kidding me. Again, unintended consequences. The laws are, again, because of the polarization and because of the education, just everything is wrong. That's why shows like this need to be done. And I'm just trying to raise the red flag. As Thomas Jefferson said, the biggest threat to our form of government is an uninformed citizen. So I'm trying to inform you about what our country is. You can cue up the second video because we're going to get ready. And we're a republic, and as Benjamin Franklin said, someone asked him, what did you get? What kind of government did you give us? He said, a republic if you can keep it. And I think that's going to be our byline from now on for this show. A republic if you can keep it. You can't keep it if you don't know what it is. And it's a republic. It's not a democracy. A democracy is the worst form of government in the world. But if you listen to the current culture and the current educational system and the political hack, all this, democracy. No. Yeah, we have a freedom to vote, but our core principles, as we will see in this video, the constitutional part, like they said, the hat trick of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, those are the foundation of this country. Okay, let her rip because I gotta zip it.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These, of course, are stirring words from America's Declaration of Independence. They are the foundation of America's commitment to civil liberty. We accept them as a given now, but only because we know America's history. At the time, they presented a serious challenge to the founders of our nation. Could they create a governing structure that would match the high moral standards they had set for themselves? Their first attempt did not go well. The Articles of Confederation, the document that governed the country through the Revolutionary War and for a few years after, was such a miserable failure that many in England and America thought the new nation would soon collapse and return hat in hand to the mother country. The Americans' wariness of central power was understandable. Americans had fought and died to win freedom from an oppressive government. They weren't about to give away that hard-won freedom to a new government of their own making. The Articles allowed for no central authority to speak of. There was no chief executive, no effective way to impose or collect taxes, no provision for the national defense. All the power belonged to the individual states, and since the states disagreed on so many issues, almost nothing got done. The Constitutional Convention of 1787 brilliantly solved this problem. It installed a system of checks and balances within the federal government and divided power between the federal government and the states. It did so while still preserving basic civil liberties. Only a few years later, the founders would buttress these liberties with a Bill of Rights specifically protecting the free exercise of religion and the freedoms of speech, press, and assembly, among other rights in the Constitution. This step, too, was taken to bring the country closer to the vision of the Declaration. But here, of course, the founders faced a moral challenge. How could America espouse freedom and also permit slavery? Many of the founders, including Thomas Jefferson, the principal drafter of the Declaration, and George Washington, who presided at the Constitutional Convention, were slaveholders. This fact leads some people to condemn America's origins. The truth is that great men, and they were great, like Washington and Jefferson, violated their own ideals in holding slaves while proclaiming equality and liberty. They knew that slavery was an evil. Jefferson, speaking of slavery, declared that I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, that his justice cannot sleep forever. Washington, upon his death, freed his slaves and made financial provision for them in his will. But we do not celebrate these and the other founders for their personal moral failures. We celebrate them for their unique moral achievements, for the revolution they bravely fought, and for the great principles they fought for: the equality of all human beings and a society rooted in liberty, the principles of the Declaration and the Constitution. To judge these documents as corrupt because imperfect men wrote them is, to say the least, foolish. It takes no account of historic context, namely, that virtually every society in history and everywhere on earth practiced slavery. It disregards the obvious truths that human beings are flawed creatures. And it elevates our current moral position to a level we haven't earned. Do we really think we are better and wiser than Washington, Franklin, Jefferson, Adams, Hamilton, Madison, and the other founders? The simple truth is that the Declaration, the Constitution, and Bill of Rights are among the most moral documents and principles ever conceived. They speak the truth about human nature, human rights, and human dignity. It was for the sake of, and indeed in the name of, the principles of the Declaration and the Constitution that Americans ended slavery, paying an enormous price in blood and treasure in a cataclysmic civil war. It was for the sake of, and in the name of, these principles that great, if also personally flawed, leaders like Martin Luther King struggled to end the regime of segregation and Jim Crow that was the legacy of slavery. King, like Frederick Douglass before him, did not reject America's founding principles. Quite the opposite. The Constitution for these men was a promise of liberty and justice for all, a promise that they quite rightly insisted that our nation honor. America's problem is not its principles. They are just and good and true. When we as a people have gone wrong, our error has not been an excess of zeal for our nation's founding principles. Rather, it has been precisely because we have at times dishonored and failed to live up to them. But never have we had, and never will we have, anything to regret when we hold fast to the principles in our founding documents. I'm Robert George, professor of jurisprudence and director of the James Madison Program at Princeton University for Prager University.
Welcome back. Okay, again, folks, you know, the whole foundation of our government is on these documents, and the history is just so rich. It's just rich of what happened, and you know, you have to learn something new every day. I mean, even though I think I know this stuff, I learn something new every day, and it's more and more and more. And it's very hard, to stand on on truth and principles when the world's just falling apart with lies and deceptions and evil. I don't even know how to say it, but the culture it's corrupt, and there's a lot of evil happening in this country. And when like Daniel Penny, you may not even know who Daniel Penny is, but he was the guy on the subway car. There was a crazy man. I don't know if he had a knife or whatever, but he was threatening to kill and stab people, and so he grabbed them and held them until the police came. But he choked out, and the guy died. But the thing is, he saved lives. And this guy had been arrested, I don't know how many times, and he should have been in jail or in an institution, but no, he's out on the streets. And so the criminal becomes the victim, and the victim becomes the criminal. They charge Daniel Penny with murder. And, when it just flies in the face of the smell test. It doesn't even pass common sense. Why would you arrest someone? Everyone in the subway car said, he saved our lives, he did what he could, but they brought him to court anyway. It is pathetic what's happening to our culture and our country, and the way our leaders are leading us down the wrong path, because they're violating, just like this guy said, the reason the country is going off wrong, it's not because of our Constitution and the country's principles are erroneous and wrong. It's because we are disrespecting our history. We're disrespecting our founding and what's real. And the truth behind the matter is, people are just lying and stealing, and it's just pathetic. People go into Congress and get into elected positions. They go in debt and they come out millionaires. How does that work? It's just not right, and I don't know what it's going to take to straighten it up, but we need to learn what's real and what's fake. It's like, when you look at how the culture treats the founding fathers, all they do is focus on their failures. But like the man said in the video, they had numerous high achievements that gave this country the freedom and what we are today. And that's the whole basis of the fake news that we fake, and the fake culture and the fake politics and the fake education. Is just really pathetic, because all they do is anything that is basic principle, constitutional, conservative, Republican, all they do is just highlight the failures and slam it. The news media, how many times do we have to say and run reports that 97% of all the news is negative to any Republican, conservative in the country's founding, and the other 3% are said once and buried, and you never even really hear it. But anything that's socialist and democratic and on democracy is 100% good news. There's never any bad news about the socialist evil narrative, and socialism is evil. If you look at the history, that's what I'm trying to, maybe we'll look at some of the communist, manifestos, and how between the Russian communists and the Chinese communists and the Southeast Asia, the Vietnamese and the Korean, and some of the communists down in South America, they didn't kill 1 million or 2 million. They've killed hundreds of millions of people in the name of communism. It's a death trap. They promise you all this stuff, and it's like you're in the mousetrap, baby. Oh, look at that cheese! It's great. Ah! And that's where America is. You're ready to grab that cheese, and it ain't going to be a pretty outcome. I'll tell you that right now, right here, right now. But okay, we're coming. It's Christmas time. This is December 2025. Next year, like I said, we're going to focus on all the shortcomings of the of our political system, and how it violates what the Constitution is trying to run the country as, and how they're perverting the whole concept of this country. Maybe we'll just throw up one more. Let's just, picture number 4. We'll just, I want to talk about the whole concept of what Thomas Jefferson said. The choice of words reflects the broader philosophical content. While John Locke spoke of life, liberty, and property, Jefferson replaced property with the pursuit of happiness, suggesting a more expansive view of what constitutes a fulfilling life. This shift indicates a recognition that happiness encompasses more than material wealth. It includes personal fulfillment and moral well-being, okay? So I just want people to realize that when you hear life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, happiness has got nothing to do with, I want to be happy all my life. No, that's not the way it works. So you can cut that down because I think we're out of time, but it's not happiness. Your rights end when you force someone else to do something or you're violating the other person's right. We have to live in we have to all get along, but yet respect each other's boundaries and freedoms. So let's, and that's where God comes in. Our unalienable rights are given to us by our Creator. So find out who your Creator is and then find out where the rights begin and end, okay? Look no further than the animal kingdom, okay? We'll talk about that too. Think about it. Prey and predators. In the name of, all right, so that's it. Good night, and we'll see you next year. Thanks.